You know, I've busted you so damn many times. You almost feel like family. What am I going to have to do to keep you out of this place?
I don't know. Maybe you should ask me to marry you, O'Malley.
You know, if I thought you were serious about that, I just might.
Oh, I am serious. Try me. See?
All right. Will you marry me?
Yeah. By the way, my real name's Alan.
Welcome to They Called Us a Movie, testing the strength of friendships one terrible movie at a time. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and other podcast services by searching They Called Us a Movie, and find us on Twitter and Instagram at TicTamPod. That's TCTAM Pod. Welcome back to They Called Us a Movie. This is Anthony Delvecchio, and with me as always is Dan Aquino and Mark Myers. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, friends.
Hello, everyone. As we briefly touched on off stream, I do have Movie Pass, and so I had a question for you guys. What is the right way to use that sort of service? I use it for just going to see movies that I normally wouldn't want to pay money for, rather than good movies, if you know what I mean. Like, my example is I was planning on seeing The Beekeeper this weekend. And, didn't get around to it. But I always felt like I had what I called a Movie Pass movie that I would only see because I had the service. Do you guys, I don't know if you have A-list or anything, what way do you like to use it?
Yeah, I wouldn't use it to see The Beekeeper, if that's what you're asking, or if you're looking for permission to see The Beekeeper.
No. I was just wanted to get how you guys like to use it, because I'm more like I'll go see movies mostly that I would feel bad paying actual money for.
So I had A-list for a while, and I used it for movies I wanted to see.
Okay.
And more to your point, I would probably take a chance more on a movie, smaller movie with the A-list, and something that I wasn't necessarily sure about. Like, I saw that horror movie Men and Crimes of the Future, or it was another movie I watched there. So it got me to the theater more often than without it.
Yeah,
but
that's what I see too.
But I didn't just be like, oh, I don't need to pay for this movie I wouldn't watch otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different tastes in movies, though.
Yeah.
I would not be caught dead in a Jason Statham movie theater. Yeah. That's just me. But that's not saying that my way of doing it was particularly different than how you're doing it. It's just a different taste of movies.
Yeah, essentially going to your point as well, I used it for Poor Things recently, just because I wasn't 100% sure, outside of you giving me the number one reasoning for going to see it. But I'm more, I'm curious if Dan had any strategy, or if it was just a way to save money for him.
Both. I think a little column A, column B. Because there were some stinkers that I saw with the A-list when I had it, but a lot of the times when I did have it, my and I were on different work schedules. So I would get out at 5, and she would get out around 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, I have time to kill, so I'll just run to the movie theaters after work, catch a movie, whatever's there. So I saw Into the Spider-Verse with A-list, which was
okay.
But then I also saw The Turning, which is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. So it was kind of hit or miss, I think. But I would tend to lean towards movies that I at least thought I was going to like, and not just oh, this looks interesting, I'll go see it.
Yeah. Just something I thought about as I sat around this weekend, not gaining the will to leave the house to go see The Beekeeper. As much as stupid movies like that are something I'd love to see, I really couldn't go, I have to leave the house to to go see the Beekeeper.
Don't worry about the Beekeeper. But please, if Godzilla -1 is still out, please go see that. I'm begging you.
All right. Okay.
I think you'll enjoy it. Well, I don't know if you'll enjoy it more than the Beekeeper because you're a Statham stan. But
yeah, a double feature is what I'm hearing, Dan.
you can do that. Yeah, hell yeah. Compare the two.
The one advantage of me being in a completely different life situation than the two of you, I can just go, you know what I want to do this Saturday? See the Beekeeper and Godzilla -1 back to back.
Oh, I miss those days.
Man, that does not appeal to me. I wouldn't even peruse the Beekeeper if it was on TBS for like 3 minutes. Like now, I wouldn't even be like, "Oh, I'll watch it to the next commercial break." I couldn't think of a movie less up my alley.
I would be more surprised if you wanted to see the movie, Ant.
Yeah, I can't even tell. I can't even tell you what the Beekeeper's about. Besides, I'm assuming he's a beekeeper. And please do not elaborate on the question. That is not an invitation.
I was going to say
not
yeah,
an invitation.
No.
Yeah,
it's
so. I'm not looking for an education.
I feel like Jason Statham is kind of turning into the action version of Rob Schneider. Right? Because remember he was like the animal, the hot chick, so like the Beekeeper.
I would still be ridiculously excited about him just having a whole line of movies that just he's an action star with an occupation.
Sure.
I'm weird like that. We all know this.
It's more believable than Arnold Schwarzenegger doing it.
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is the grocery clerk.
Yeah, it's like I just want Gerard Butler to start starring in movies that are just one word name for the vehicle that they're currently on.
Well, Gerard Butler, he's a treasure. So,
I'm so mad that his next movie is not called Ship. By the way,
it's the plane. Now it's just modes of transportation.
Yeah.
Train.
I'll be honest with you. If you put 20 Jason Statham movies on the board and 20 Gerard Butler movies on the board, I'm not confident that I'd be able to tell which one is which.
Especially on the action side, yeah.
Yeah, but that's just me. They're both very similar territories for me.
Yeah, they're definitely encroaching on each other's respective movies.
Yeah. Well, besides that, and besides Mark's failed plans to go see The Beekeeper, which I'm sure.
The Beekeeper.
I'm sure.
You sound so happy.
I'm sure was some other time, man. Hope so. Don't.
God willing.
Yeah. Don't just run your car in the garage because of this missed opportunity. Anyway, we do have a movie this week, which was probably about as good as The Beekeeper, but this week was Dan's pick.
I thought you were going to say probably as good as running your car in the garage. Was right.
You know what?
The equivalent.
You know what? It's probably longer than running the car in your garage, depending on the size of the garage, I suppose. But Dan, why don't you introduce this week's movie?
Sure. So this week's movie is actually a Guy special. This movie was brought to my attention by our good friend Guy. We've had him on the podcast before. So direct all your blame to him. But he recommended this movie from quote unquote 1992 called Shadow of the Dragon. And so as Anthony alluded to, it's a slog, but it has some of the most mind-boggling story plot lines I've ever seen. It has the weirdest the weirdest audio I've ever heard in a movie that we've covered. And it also has the strangest flashback scene I think we've ever covered in a movie. And I was
gonna say, I've never been more uncomfortable.
It's the most jarring thing ever. It's just breakneck speed there. It's just so this movie really, I wanted to embrace the weird this year. We talked about it in our 2023 wrap-up episode, and we kind of came to the consensus, like, let's kind of go out and search a little bit more. And I think this movie matches that motto. It's very strange. 20 minutes into this movie, I had no clue who the protagonists were. I don't know their names still. They've got to be in their 60s in this movie, and they're every old man is dating a 20-year-old.
Yes.
It's incredibly creepy.
Yeah.
Robert Zadar is on the box, like the box art, maybe 3 scenes, not many lines.
Probably about 15 minutes total of the whole movie.
Right. He has no bearing on the plot, really.
Yeah.
I think this was like basically, oh, he was in Samurai Cop, so people will know him from that. And this movie is essentially it's a Samurai Cop Miami connection feel to it. So although it was a slog, I still had fun with it. There's a lot to really dive into.
Okay. Mark, what about you? Where are you coming from? Shadow of the Dragon.
Yeah, so I was completely confused by this movie. I don't know if picking up certain details was just because of the quality of the rip on that where we watched it. Just because the whole opening scene occurs, and then all of a sudden I cackled at the end of the Vietnam scene because it just comes out of nowhere, and it's the most terrible special effects I've seen for someone stepping on a mine. I guess he did.
It was grenade. I think
Grenade. Okay. And then it just hard cuts from that to Los Angeles, present day, and then it's kind of music, and I was like, oh, okay. So they didn't really pay an editor well for this. But yeah, the whole movie. I've said this multiple times to you, Ant. Movies like this make me feel like the 3 of us, could get in a room and just write a movie that we could put out in like a weekend. We could pull a Vince McMahon Hulk Hogan here, minus the cocaine, and just get something that's better than this movie.
Well, why are we cutting out the cocaine? What is there a reason for that?
Because we can't say illegal stuff on the podcast, Dan.
Look, if you ripped a line of
cocaine.
If you ripped a line of cocaine this past weekend, you'd be talking about how much you love The Beekeeper.
Exactly.
No, wouldn't have stopped you.
You figured out my euphemism. That's what going to see The Beekeeper means, Ant. No. So yeah, for this entire movie, I could not figure out why any decisions were made in it. Why these cops had this free reign, but were also morons, and I guess also great detectives. That conundrum was weird. They go off on their own twice alone to different cities, one to a different country, with no backup. And in the middle of the movie, there is a love, like a romance movie going on that you like. These 2 of the characters fall in love, and you get, which I hope is what Dan's weirdest flashback scene is.
Yeah.
We find out how the 2 other characters get together. And then
thing ever.
The conversation in the kitchen, I said to a coworker today, was the biggest fail of the Bechdel test that I've ever seen. Literally, the only time those 2 girls interact and they just talk about their husbands. And donuts. It's literally the only time they interact in the movie. And it is the strangest section of the movie in a movie that is just strange overall. I couldn't really follow most of the plot. It seemed like there were 3 different plots going on. Like you had the revenge angle, you had the drug smuggling operation, and then they were also a cult as well that was killing people by hitting them with ice picks in the neck or something. Yeah, the movie notwithstanding, the sets were amazing. They look like they shot it in the same warehouse and just put walls up and all around. Like there was no concept of making them even remotely look like a police station or a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, oh, there's a room with a bed. That's a hospital. And then again, that whole scene in the hospital showed off apparently these brilliant detectives are just morons as well. But yeah, this movie didn't know really exactly what it wanted to be. I think it's kind of slightly an insult to put it in the same category as a Miami Connection, because as insane as that movie was, I could actually follow it and figure out what was going on exactly. And then this movie has a weird ending. And yeah, overall just weird, hard to follow, kind of way longer than the runtime says it was supposed to be, and probably the closest to a straight up worried how am I going straight up like close to the entire movie being mostly racist in it in a weird way, but yeah, this was definitely weird, Dan.
As for me, I've never heard of Shadow of the Dragon. Wish I hadn't. There is a reason why Law and Order has gone on for so long, and it's because it knows how to do a police procedural well and pace it well. And there's a reason why there isn't a sequel to Shadow of the Dragon, because this is as dry as your driest police procedural, and it is so poorly paced, and it feels like a 2.5 hour film. This feels like Zodiac. That's really feels like Zodiac.
It's a very, very low budget Zodiac. Yes.
It's carbon copy. Yeah. There are moments which are baffling. Lots of moments that are baffling. The 2-minute conversation in Vietnam that takes place completely in the dark was a choice. I've never been, throughout watching all these movies, I have never been more uncomfortable than hearing how our partner O'Malley met his wife, because there's so much wrong with it.
Oh, yes. Man, such a wild scene.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny because before that, our friend Margie relays how she met our hero Eric, and she mentions, I was a child.
Yes. Oh, good. I'm glad you picked that up.
And they play it off as like, oh, and I think she says, now he's looking at me some other way or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, he came in and looked at me another way.
Yeah, and it's that uncomfortableness is immediately topped by the story of O'Malley's wife being a party girl in the Hollywood Hills, getting arrested multiple times by O'Malley, and then O'Malley proposing to her while she's in a holding cell
with other detainees.
Yes.
So weird.
My favorite part of the movie. So uncomfortable. But then Robert Zadar, as mentioned, completely underutilized. He's the police chief. He's not even a villain. And yeah, this movie goes on for way too fucking long. The twist is pretty obvious, because there'd be no point in the first scene if it wasn't obvious. And I kind of shuffled through the last 15 minutes of this movie. Mark said that the ending is weird. I'll take his word for it. Because I figured...
What happens at the end is all of a sudden it turns into an action movie out of nowhere. Because it had the police procedural, and then it just decides... It almost goes into The Godfather. How Michael has all the heads of the gang families killed. Mm-hmm. It's sort of what happens at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
The villain just kind of goes around murdering random. I don't even know who he kills.
Well, O'Malley gets a call, right? He gets a call from some dude who's like, round up all the guys and meet at the temple. And I think Min says when they meet with him, it's like, oh, I've got people from the community who are ready to help take down the dragon. So I'm assuming it's those people.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah,
the guy's name was Tiny.
Tiny. No, Tiny was the club owner that got blown up in the payphone.
Okay, that's who I thought you were talking about. He just watches as this man lights a stick of dynamite.
A cartoon stick of dynamite.
Yeah. So the very end is basically our villain, apparently not dead, or I don't know if he was supposed to be dead. Sneaks into the temple and starts like rubbing the face of that green statue, and then
both beautiful and ugly.
Yeah, and then he hears our heroes, quote unquote, come towards the room, and he hides very obviously in the corner of the room. And then they find him, and then their little fight ensues, and then the statue falls on top of him, and then that's like the end of the movie.
It's a 30-second fight.
and
Literally
and
30 seconds.
and then they get the necklace back or whatever, and then they go, oh well, now everything can move forward or something. I don't like. It's like it's so weird.
The last line of the movie is Buddha truly loves. Cut to black.
True words never spoken.
Oh yeah. But so here's the thing. The movie is essentially there's a platoon of 60-year-olds in Vietnam. It's the oldest platoon in the history of warfare.
It's like the Five Bloods.
yeah, essentially. And, I didn't think of that. Yeah, it's these old white dudes in Vietnam. They come across a temple. One of them knew about it somehow. We don't know. He steals an amulet, leaves his platoon members for dead, comes back at the end of the movie, is hideously disfigured. Don't know why. Don't know what his purpose was.
He was blown up in the minefield because he mentions because his whole reason for wanting revenge was he felt like it was wrong for the government to put the buffoon Eric in charge of their platoon.
Okay.
And B, he says they left him for dead by sending him out into the minefield.
Okay, none of that is true.
No, but it's also like you're harboring this 30-year-old this grudge because you wanted to be the leader of the platoon. He's got no leadership skills.
Yeah, we know he murders innocent civilians.
Yeah.
We know nothing about him.
Yeah.
Really.
Just that he spent the last 20 years creating an Asian gang.
Right, known as the Dragon, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, this movie is confounding. It's embarrassing, this movie, I think.
I sort of feel like this movie is just made so that they could say, hey, 60-year-olds aren't dead yet. They could still do stuff. Because that's all this movie is just 60-year-old men banging dimes and just getting stuff done.
And beating up 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
People, kung fu masters. They're just with the old man strength. And their half torn open shirts.
Yeah.
So good.
I swear, at one point, when you were talking about the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
So the scene prior to that is Eric, he's a detective too, right?
Eric is our lead, our main guy.
Okay, so Detective Brunner, if what I'm getting at here.
Brunner is the villain.
Oh, he's the villain. All right, so
O'Malley is the partner.
O'Malley's the partner. Okay, so who's the good? Wait, who is
Eric? Eric is our main guy.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so Eric gets beaten up by some thugs.
Yes.
They cut to the next scene, and it's O'Malley on the bed with an ice pack on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then Eric shows up, and I could have sworn that O'Malley was Eric. I had no clue who was who in this movie. And throughout the movie, they're cutting back and forth between O'Malley and Eric. What's going on here? Where are they?
When that scene happened, when he was on the bed icing his head, I was like, "That's his daughter, right? That's his daughter, right?"
Please tell me that's his daughter.
You sweet summer child, you.
And alas, just some chick that he used his power as a police officer that continues to arrest her multiple times
just so they can see each other.
Yeah.
So
odd, weird.
Can we talk? I feel like I need to talk about this. I need to bring this up. We got to talk about this. Can we please talk about the Kit Kat Club?
Sure.
Spelled KKK. That is a gross oversight.
Or is it?
Maybe, I don't know.
They knew what they were doing.
It's Krusty's Comedy Classic all over again. Oh man. I pulled a Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood meme. I go, look at that. It's spelled KKK.
Oh man, this was interesting. It's an interesting movie. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. Can't even say I technically finished this. I think I skimmed it with like 10 minutes left. I figured I got the gist of it. But
don't get me wrong with it. I enjoyed it, but there were times I definitely zoned out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was tough to get through. I would have gotten through it if it wasn't for me having to write notes, and then because everything takes a little bit longer to do that. So this movie turned out to be like a 2-hour movie for me. But Shadow of the Vampire, Shadow of the Dragon from '92 was directed by Jimmy Williams. Doesn't sound real, but he directed Manosaurus and the Education of a Vampire. Stars William Smith, also doesn't sound real. Robert Zadar, Sandy Palm, Donna Cherry, Trudy Adams, Gerald Akamura, and Dennis Funn. None of those names sound real. IMDb score of 3.9. I couldn't find a Rotten Tomato score, couldn't find a box office, couldn't find a budget. So, Shadow of the Dragon. You guys want to get into the plot?
We could try. We could see what we can do.
We will try and figure out what happens in this movie, sure. But Dan, before that, what do you got?
Okay, guys. Again, if you have a moment, we would really appreciate you checking out some friends of the podcast. Our good friend Tia and her co-host Brittany host a weekly podcast called The Top 10 with Tia. It is a podcast where Tia and Brittany just run down their top 10 lists of the week: movies, television, actors, video games. They cover a wide gambit of topics. So if you are into lists and people running down those lists, this is the podcast for you. You can find them at geekvibesnation.com. Just search The Top 10 with Tia. And last but not least, the Game Vault pod starring our very own Mark Myers and our friends Tom and Jen. It is a bi-weekly podcast where you could find it on any podcast platform of your choice. And they run down video games that are coming out, video games you should be paying attention to, games they're playing. They also review old school games. So, Nintendo, Sega, first-gen PlayStation, Xbox, you name it. They've played it, and they run it down, and they can recommend if you should go out of your way to check it out. They also stream on Twitch over at Game Vault Pod, so you can go subscribe to them and watch them play through their old school games and just random games that they're playing. Please also follow them on all their socials at Game Vault Pod.
Okay, great. And we're going to take a quick break, and you guys are going to listen to messages from friends of the podcast. So we will be right back.
Hey, this is Ken M.
from Padawan J.
from the ODPH podcast.
Each week, we talk a parlay of topics.
That's right, whether it's sports, pro wrestling, movies, TV, comics, and more, we've got a take on it.
And don't forget, odphpodcast.com for links for Patreon, TeePublic, and the Parlay Points blogs, and much more.
Thanks for listening to the ODPH podcast. Now back to your regularly scheduled show.
Welcome, travelers. Seems like you're looking for a story. Well, I got one for you. It involves adventure, friendship, and all sorts of...
Earl, why don't you tell him about that time I stole that big-ass melon?
Yeah, I was going for more...
Or you could
epic.
tell him about the time I kicked her ass, Earl.
I wouldn't ever tell him.
Do I need to get my ref gear on?
Okay, everyone, shut up. Now come with me as I tell you a story from afar. Hey everybody, my name's David. I'm the DM for From Afar Podcast. From Afar Podcast is all about four friends separated by distance, but brought together by adventure. Hope you all stop by and give us a listen. Thanks.
And welcome back. Now it's time to get into the plot for Shadow of the Dragon. We open on a guy doing some martial arty things with a sword while backlit before we transition to Vietnam-era war footage behind the credits. So we come across a team of GIs led by a Stacy Keach-looking guy as they wordlessly move through some bamboo forest. And one of the guys immediately gets impaled, and the team comes across a small village of huts until they come across a temple. They start to move out, but one of the guys that looks like Charles Bronson hangs back to sexually harass a goddess statue before he steals the gem placed on top of her head and catches up with the rest of the team.
I feel like this scene is the perfect example. It really sets the tone for the rest of the movie, where the villain has a minute-long conversation with the Buddha statue.
Yep.
Where he can't decide if the Buddha statue is ugly or beautiful.
Yeah. Calls her an ugly green bitch.
Yeah, but you're beautiful, but you're ugly. Yeah, all right, man. I think they just kind of let the camera roll.
Yeah.
Right. When do I stop?
Is that an example of negging or whatever it's called?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess so, right?
I thought he was going to defile the statue.
Well, Defile as in like cut the head off of it?
More like hump it or something.
Okay, like go full force and fuck it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Not that I want to see that happen, Dan. You know, this is the way you say, sure, yeah. I'm not asking it to happen. I thought it was going to happen.
You just thought this is the movie where we see a man fuck a statue.
Yes. And not
It-
mannequin.
Yeah, you know what? If it was gonna happen in any movie, it would have been this one.
He then finds a couple of villagers, then indiscriminately shoots them with a shotgun, much to the disapproval of the rest of the men. After they leave, a kid comes out of the woods to mourn his dead parents. And then at night, there's a firefight as the men trade shots back and forth with some VC. A few of the men die, a few more are injured, except for Bruner, the Charles Bronson-looking guy. Team leader sends Bruner out to find help and send a chopper. After a really long, pointless conversation between the leader and another guy shot entirely in the dark, Bruner gets blown up by a landmine as he goes for help.
Yeah, they didn't want to spend an extra dime on lighting.
Yep.
Yeah, that scene was tough. I couldn't parse out who was who died, who lived. Just not a very well thought out scene.
Mm-hmm. We then cut to present day LA as some sort of Asian cult is initiating the brawny paper towel guy to the secret club. They brand him in the arm and then take off their masks as the leader with some sort of voice modulator talks incoherently. Then Vin Diesel ritualistically kills some guy with a hat pin.
Do we know who that guy was?
No. We don't know who any of these people are.
No, we don't.
Okay. I didn't know if they said, oh, that's maybe a member of a rival clan or something. It's just some random guy they kill.
Yeah, I mean, the leader could have said it, but without subtitles and with that voice modulator, I could understand maybe 3 words the guy said the entire time.
I laughed pretty hard when the main, well, who we turn out to see is the main villain. He comes in wearing the Tin Man outfit essentially, and he has the robot voice.
Mm-hmm.
When he takes the helmet off and continues to talk in the robot voice, I'm like, this is hilarious. Who is like Dr. Claus leading this team apparently?
Yeah. Somewhere across town, cops respond to a late night burglar alarm going off in an alley. As the criminals try to make off with some empty cardboard boxes, cops tell them to stop. They get into a firefight with them. Cops shoot wildly, hitting a few of the criminals. Criminals make a break for it. They wind up carjacking someone, then immediately flip the car and explode. Cops pull out the remaining guy before the car explodes even more. I like that it was like, it could have been me, and then just passes out.
That was Jen's favorite part of the movie. He just slowly goes to sleep.
Later, the cops get chewed out by the captain, played by Robert Zadar, but he's only pretending to be mad because he's actually happy that they killed people. He says that he'll have internal affairs, label the shootings as justified. That's the end of that chapter.
Well,
And
it
that's
is
the end of that.
that made me laugh was when it kind of going back here when his platoon kills those two civilians in Vietnam, and then they talk about like O'Malley and Eric talk about we still got to make it to LA where we can become cops. Like, yeah, that tracks. We continue to murder innocent civilians.
Yeah. And they're waiting the suspect to wake up at the hospital so they could question him on a string of warehouse thefts. They head out and wind up at the hospital where they find the prisoner has been executed by an ice pick through the back of the neck. They go to talk with the guard outside the room, but the one that was there when they got there is already gone, and the one that has been there all day said he just went for a coffee break. And then at some sort of warehouse, the Dragon Cult is looking over their inventory of contraband. When they count, they realize that they are short, so they suspect the truck driver. So they bring him in front of the boss, and someone snoops in his truck and immediately finds the stolen cocaine. The guy that finds it winds up stealing it from him and drives away. And the boss pretends that they are happy with the truck driver's work, but instead they actually just wind up chopping his hand off. Meanwhile, the guy that stole the coke that the truck driver stole winds up getting blown up by a car bomb. Cops, meanwhile, head to a club called Kit Kat Club, talk with the lounge singer. They conspicuously sit at the table looking like a couple of cops until the lounge singer finishes. Cop goes back to talk to her, named Margie, and winds up getting accosted by the club owner. Margie lets him in, saying he's an old friend. They talk a bit about old times until she learns that he is investigating a murder, but she says she doesn't want to talk about it right there. So she says meet in the back in 5 minutes. So the cop whose name I think is Eric sends the other cop whose name I think is O'Malley home and goes to talk with Marge. They reminisce a little bit, her telling him how she wound up in the club after years of drug addiction, and him telling her how he became a cop. Then she starts telling him about the gang and how it's a mix of Vietnamese immigrants and American street gangs. But as she talks to him about the gang, some dudes show up and beat them up. The other cop winds up at home saying that he must have been roofied because he only had one glass of wine and his head's pounding. As his entirely too young wife attends to him, there's a knock on the door and it's Eric and Margie.
Yeah, I just want to say, Dan's probably going to be a little longer than me. I just want to say, this entire movie, there were moments where I could not tell who's with who and whose side was on whose side at any point, outside of the two main lieutenants for the dragon.
I didn't even know who was a part of the cult, really.
Vin Diesel.
We got Vin Diesel, and we had...
And the guy in the black and the coat, the black and white.
No clue. I don't know who that is, but I like the scene when Eric is getting jumped, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And thugs just continue to run out of the darkness at him. It's like, all right, your turn. All right, now your turn. And Margie, she gets abducted, but then easily escapes the car, right? Am I thinking of a different scene?
She gets abducted after their romance montage, but she's there for a while.
Yeah, like some guy kidnaps her while Eric is getting beaten up.
Yeah, and then she slips the rope in the back seat of the car.
Yeah, and she just gets out of the car.
Yeah.
Right? What was the point of that scene?
Well, you find out later, I think her fake nail shows up later during an investigation or something. That's how they tie the car to the gang or something.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yeah. The fake nail falls off.
Gotcha.
So Eric and Margie come in and the guys go off to talk about what Marge told Eric, and the girls talk about how they met their men. Margie says she was a child when she met Eric, which is pretty bad. And the other cop's wife tells Margie about how she used to be a party girl going to illicit parties in the mansions and kept getting arrested by her husband, Brian. And he proposed to her while she was in prison. Just the highlight of this film.
That party scene might have been the most casual nudity that I've filmed.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, son, they're naked now.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. She's like stripping in front of these old men.
Yeah.
It was very jarring. Like, that's something that could have easily just been told in the present day as a story.
Yep.
Like, oh yeah, I was basically, my life was on the wrong track, and O'Malley came and helped me, and he showed me the right way, and we fell in love. The end.
That version of that story makes O'Malley not seem like an enormous creep.
Right.
The story that we get, the version we get in grave detail, makes him seem like, I don't know, bad dude.
Like, he was purposely going out of his way to get her.
Yeah. ACAB, I suppose, including O'Malley.
It's that story's not appropriate for children.
The guys come back and Eric tells Margie that he wants to spend the day with her tomorrow because he has off. Meanwhile, the gang continues to do their business of licking fingertips of cocaine while they have a dating montage of Eric and Margie. That's all. That's every scene with the gang, just like another person just licking their fingers of cocaine. It's like, yep, it's the good stuff.
It's still cocaine. Yep.
During the go ahead.
Just real quick, the cuts in this movie are also very jarring because you go from a nice scene between our protagonists and then the gang members doing something with cocaine back to the protagonist doing something nice.
Yeah. Especially here when we have our romance montage.
Yeah, it doesn't fit.
Yeah. Which, again, is just like, 60-year-old people could still fall in love.
It's not open for you people. Don't let them tell you different.
You could go to the amusement park.
Young women will definitely want to sleep with you.
Meanwhile, the gang continues to do their business. The leader of the dragon then plans to lure the cops on 2 separate trips, which is the most, this is the weirdest part of the film.
It's up there.
Because O'Malley gets sent to Mexico by contact, where he goes into a Tijuana strip club and immediately gets attacked in the back and thrown in a dumpster. Meanwhile, Eric heads out to Chicago to meet with his contacts out near Wrigley Field, and then another one by the river. Winds up going into a sketchy building by himself, and he gets beat up by 2 guys, but he winds up shooting and killing them and then just leaving, as far as I could tell.
Yeah. This is definitely a scene of them being the worst cops.
Yes.
Ever.
Yeah. O'Malley walks into the room might as well have just said ambush on it.
Yeah.
It's essentially the scene from Goodfellas when Joe Pesci walks into the room where he thinks he's going to be made.
Yeah.
And just his brains blown out, but he survives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just throw him in the dumpster.
He's right, and he's back another 2 days later.
He's here to tell the story.
Why did they kill him?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because they were going to kill Eric. The goons
Yeah.
were going to kill Eric.
Yep.
But O'Malley gets off light.
Just gets tossed in a dumpster. It's so weird.
No one of no one important in this movie dies.
Yeah, and what's weirder is that it's told as like a story. Well, while you were out doing this is what happened to me.
Yeah,
it's such a weird presentation of these scenes.
They just decide to bring narration into the movie.
Yeah.
It's the only time.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Margie gets kidnapped by the dragon. They get ready to just straight up execute her, but the leader says something nearly intelligible, saying something about getting her comfortable. The cops find the abandoned car. The chief says it belongs to the owner of the East-West Trading Company. The guys investigate the car and find a fingernail that they recognize from Margie. They notice that they've been tailed by someone. They follow him to a parking lot where he meets with a couple of other people. At the police station, they talk with an officer that ran some tests on the car. They mention a trace amount of some sort of narcotic and some Asian fibers. I love when they're tailing the tail, and it's O'Malley just being a buffoon and accidentally kicking a can.
Well, it goes back to Mark's point. These guys are terrible.
They're really bad cops.
Right.
But apparently the best cops in this precinct?
Yeah.
They work on Naked Gun logic, where Frank Drebin is both the stupidest cop and also the best cop.
They do kind of have a very George Kennedy, Leslie Nielsen vibe to them.
Well, because they're both 70 years old.
Exactly. O'Malley is totally a George Kennedy.
Yeah. It's so bad.
I know they are definitely older than this, but the funniest part would be if we went and looked and did their age, and they're both like 38 years old.
Oh, if they're in their 30s, that's a rough 30.
No,
it's probably not true. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how these guys got the parts, but this movie was doomed from go, if that was the case.
These are schlubby dudes.
Very. The one guy looked like Jerry the King Lawler. The scene where they're going to flay him and they kind of like cut his shirt open so you could see the chest hair, like the man boobs and everything. That's Jerry the King Lawler. When he would he would wrestle in the singlet.
Yeah.
And he would just have he'd have like one titty out. Like big Jerry the King Lawler vibe.
Yeah. Okay, so how old was he? He was about 60 at the time.
Sure, yeah.
1933, is my math right? This is 92?
Yeah, that's 63. Isn't it 61?
33, yeah. Or 59, I believe.
That's bad.
Thank God.
And let's see if we have our good friend O'Malley, Sandy Palm. Do we have a date on him?
I'm gonna say he's older.
Yeah, he's got to be in his 60s too.
Yeah, maybe not much older, like maybe 62, but he's definitely older. At least he looks much older.
Yeah, he isn't in much. He's only in like 5 movies.
I will say one thing this movie had going for it, as far as I can remember, although there is a 40-year age difference between the cops and their wives, at least they don't show them getting it on.
Sure. Fucking.
Yeah, they showed restraint. Either that or the women said, absolutely not. We're going to walk if you make us do that.
Yeah. No, Sandy Palm was in Killing American Style.
Okay. Yeah.
He has no credit, though.
This movie, again, like Mark, I know you were saying, and I agree with you 100%, that it's kind of, it's not fair to put this in the same movie, like the same genre as like the same tier as a Miami Connection or Samurai Cop.
Yeah.
But the the actors and the way that it's kind of the pacing of it
Oh yeah,
is reminiscent.
Yeah, they're all B movies, essentially in the case. But my point was that outside of the quality that we saw the other two movies in, as well, and also that I think my main point is that I could follow those two movies,
Sure.
and as insane as part of their plots were, or at least I could follow what was going on. At this point, like they would go so long into tangents in this, like the meeting our husband scene, that I would forget what they were doing right beforehand.
Yeah.
That's the pacing, probably the correct term that we've been looking for in this, which is weird that it's 96 minutes and it feels like it's, as Han said, Zodiac. It's just insane. I don't know how you could. It seems like they filmed this whole movie using the longest second.
Maybe, yeah.
Eric tells O'Malley that they should check out dojos. Meanwhile, the leader of the dragon meets with one of his guys, and it's made obvious to us that they planted the evidence so that the cops would find it. Margie tries to call the cops while being held captive, but the dragon leader finds her out and knocks her unconscious. O'Malley, meanwhile, enrolls himself in a dojo. That scene goes nowhere. Eric goes and talks to the owner of the Kit Kat Club, and he gives him some info on the dragon, which is info we already knew. Eric goes home, and Min, the guy that's been tailing him, is there with a gun. Turns out Min is the child that saw his parents murdered by Eric's team. Wants to find out who killed his parents and who stole the jewel from the temple. He believes Eric and O'Malley are honorable men, so he doesn't think they did, but wants to be sure. So he brings them to a dojo, and a guy does a human lie detector test on them, and they pass.
Oh, by the way, this part coming up is probably my favorite moment in the movie.
Min then shows them the statue that was in the temple. Min then says he has a lot to discuss with them over some tea.
Yeah, so right before this, I don't know if this is when, everybody was zoning out, but I caught this. After they do the whole reading and stuff like that, one of them, O'Malley or Eric, goes, yeah, so we had you come down here because this is a trap and we're going to arrest you.
No. Like, again, just pure buffoon.
And then Min says something, and then they go off to do the thing, but just out of nowhere, like, this was a trap, and there was like nobody else there, like to help arrest these people. It was just the weirdest. Like, probably read well when they wrote it down, and then was just poorly delivered.
Well, the temple priest was played by our good friend Gerald Akamura, who's in Samurai Cop. He's the guy who's getting ready. He's in like the black Speedo, and Samurai Cop and his partner are trying to arrest him, and they can't open the sliding door.
That's right.
Yeah, now I know who you're talking about.
Thankfully, he's fully clothed in this movie.
Min says he believes that Bruner is alive, and he is probably the one who stole the gem. Believes the gem is in Southern California. Min has a group of people that are going to volunteer against the dragon as long as the cops need them. Dragon tries to shake down some business owner. At the precinct, Eric talks with Carlisle, a vice cop that goes undercover and talks about how he loves to play pretend. Then the dragon comes back to the warehouse and shakes everyone down, winds up electrocuting a guy, then sets the warehouse ablaze. Guys answer the call of the arson. They put the suspect in the back, and Eric meets with the owner, but the owner gives him no information. Somehow the suspect gets killed in the back of the squad car while 10 cops stand around. Then all of a sudden they decide to go back into the warehouse where someone goes into a vacuum room and explodes himself.
Oh, that was great.
Didn't understand that. And meanwhile, the warehouse owner goes home, talks to his wife about getting insurance money for the warehouse being burned down. I think that was just another opportunity to say, hey, 60-year-old men can bag some hot blondes. And then he goes to the car and sees that it's been tampered with. So he switches to his wife's car, but someone is in the back seat and winds up blowing the guy away with 2 shots to the chest. Back at the club, the owner follows a drunk, but gets stabbed by a guy with a sword while he's looking into a window. The owner grabs the guy and crushes his bones with a bear hug. The club owner manages to find a payphone and call Eric to tell him where the warehouse is, that Margie is being held. But he's on the phone. Someone throws a stick of cartoon dynamite in the phone booth and explodes him.
I just love that instead of getting away from the dynamite, he felt that his last moment should be talking to this cop on the phone. And then that cop was, as he did in multiple other scenes, just kept asking the stupidest questions while his people got either beat up or blown up.
So Eric goes to the warehouse and sneaks in, finds Margie, but is immediately taken down by the dragon. O'Malley calls in reinforcements to meet. Eric is tied up as the leader. The dragon talks to him. Leader reveals himself to be Bruner, which wasn't a very particularly good kept secret. And apparently he's mad at Eric because he was in charge back in Vietnam, and then he was left to die. And he mentions that he took the gem. This is where my notes end.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of fighting. I couldn't tell who was who and who was winning. Outside of the guy in the black and white, like traditional karate garb, was winning a fight he shouldn't have been winning. And then, they fight and they, gather, and then all of a sudden it cuts back to the police station, and they get a call. Somebody calls 911 about a fire and gunfire at this warehouse, and the operator ignores it and then turns to Robert Zadar and goes, "Oh, this crazy person was saying there was a fire at this warehouse over here." And then he does the essential, like, "Oh, those two," in terms of O'Malley and Eric. And then they go, backup comes, they go and save the day. And then it cuts to the temple. And then the whole thing I said about the ending, where they meet with Min in the temple and he thanks them for everything. And then they have that 30-second fight. In the back, statue falls, Buddha is love, or whatever he says, and then that's the end. It really, nothing of consequence happens after your notes.
As I figured.
Yeah, there's a great, if you want to, for any odd reason before you, edit or anything, and that Robert Zadar scene at the end, there's like a great like close-up of his face when he just does like the smirk and shake the head of the like captain of the police department, upset with his two detectives, the 80s thing I'm talking about.
You boys.
Yeah. It just made me laugh because that does not look good on Robert Zadar.
Yeah. Well, that was Shadow the Dragon. It was a movie.
I also found out while searching for this, which is why I asked for the link, there was also a movie called Shadow the Dragon that was like a 1970s Filipino, they called it a Bruce exploitation movie. I guess they were just ripping off Bruce Lee movies. Mm-hmm. So that was my search for this movie beforehand. And I was worried that Dan had picked this really weird, obscure Filipino movie.
Instead, we got this.
That was probably a better movie, to be honest. The Bruce Lee ripoff movie.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was Shadow the Dragon. And we're going to take a quick break. And you guys are going to listen to some ads, so pay those bills. And we will be right back. And welcome back. Now it's time for the third segment. And this week, we're not going to do anything specific to this week's movie. I am basically going to rip off another podcast. And we are going to talk about our top 10 films of all time. We've done 260 plus episodes, and we've never talked about our favorite movies of all time. So I figured this was a great opportunity to discuss and, top 10 movies of all time. And I figured we'll just go down our lists. We don't have to snake order this or anything like that. I think it'll go quicker if we just go through. So who would like to go first?
Curious. I was talking about this yesterday. I'm very curious about Mark's top 10.
I am too. So I feel like he should go last because I think he's going to be the wild card. I think for the most part, I could probably guess 6 of your movies, Dan. And I feel like we're going to overlap a little bit too.
I think so as well. Mark and I were talking about that off podcast that we'll have some similarities, I think. But so I'll go first if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, I think so.
So this is in order from 1 to 10, not 10 to 1. So
you're number 1 off top,
right off the bat.
Okay.
Unless you want it the other way.
It's your list. You do you.
All right. So I'm gonna go 1 to 10.
Okay.
Number 1, Jaws. This movie scared me when I was a kid. Left a lasting impression on me. One of the reasons I love cinema. Number 2, Ghostbusters. Also a movie I distinctly remember from my childhood. Seeing the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man come onto the screen just wowed me. I had no idea how they did it, and just all the leads, amazing. Almost a perfect movie. Number 3, the 1989 Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. It basically built my love for Batman. It's still my all-time favorite Batman movie. I might get a little flack for this, but so you guys let me know. But at number 4, I'm including the Lord of the Rings, all of the Lord of the Rings.
Allow it.
Okay. So I had Return of the King.
Does that
Right.
include the Baskin or whatever that's called? The
Ralph
Rankin Bass.
Yeah,
Rankin
Rankin Bass. No. No, it is
well,
not.
you said all of them.
Well, I'm talking about the Lord of the Rings proper, Mark.
The trilogy.
The trilogy, yes.
It tells one complete story, so I would allow it as one entry.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you. I got a little flack for it at work today when I was talking about it. Like, you're not one of those people who puts all of them in just one. So yeah,
it would be stupid if it was like number 4, Lord of the Rings, 5, Return of the King, 6, Two Towers. It's like, well, why even make a list at that point? So I'm fine with it.
Cool. I appreciate it. So at number 5, Back to the Future. It's the gold standard for time travel movies. Just a really fun movie. I'll watch it whenever it's on. Number 6, The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. One of my all-time favorite horror movies / sci-fi movies. Great special effects. It's a must-watch every year for Halloween. Number 7 is the 1933 King Kong movie. That is the movie that, even before Jaws, that made me fall in love with movies. I, again, remember seeing it and just falling in love with the movie and falling in love with movies after that. It's amazing. Number 8 is Jurassic Park. Again, close to being a perfect movie. The T-Rex breaking out of the cage and roaring into the night is just like ingrained in me. It's such a perfect shot. I love it. Number 9 is Mad Max Fury Road, a cinematographer's wet dream. Every shot is beautiful, and I was blown away by how good it was. Everyone kept talking about, you have to see it, you have to see it. And for the first time, everyone was right. This is a must watch. Number 10, it's a little, number 10 was tough for me, but as I was going through all my movies, this one really stood out to me. It's one that I watch a lot, is Inglourious Bastards, Quentin Tarantino's World War II reimagination. Just some of the dialogue, amazing. The bar scene, I remember seeing it in the theaters, just literally on the edge of my seat, not knowing what was going to happen. It's a masterclass in writing, I think. So yeah, that's my top 10.
It's a solid list. I could have guessed at least 4 of them, I think.
Probably the top 4.
Yeah. But no, yeah, it's a very good list.
Thank you.
I think the one surprise was Mad Max Fury Road.
I will say Mad Max Fury Road bumped out, and I think you guys would probably surprised this wasn't on there. Braveheart, right?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that movie. We would always talk about it, but I can't support him anymore. I can't support Mel. And I was a big fan of his when I was a little younger, and just the things that have gone on, unfortunately. It's a good movie, but I think Mad Max is superior to that movie. It blows it out of the water, if I'm being honest.
Okay. All right. No, solid list.
Thank you.
I think at the very least we have some overlap, and I think our reasonings are kind of similar. I noticed that you had a lot of movies from your childhood in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm no different. So I'm going to go, and then we'll give Mark, because Mark's the wild card, as we said. I don't know if I could guess more than 2, maybe.
Yeah.
Off of his list. So my number, I'm going to go 10-1.
Okay.
Change it up a little bit. Before that, honorable mentions: Terminator 2 Judgment Day, just missed. The Thing, Dan mentioned. The Dark Knight, Shawshank Redemption, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, Almost Famous, Once Upon a Time in the West, Inglourious Bastards, Fargo, just to name a few. But my number 10 is a childhood favorite and a yearly viewing of either Memorial Day or the 4th of July. Technically, it's a 4th of July movie, but I watch it on Memorial Day to bring in the summer. It's The Sandlot.
Oh.
Perfect baseball movie for me. Number 9, Halloween. Have to have a John Carpenter movie in there. The Thing, just off the list. Between the two, I think both of them are perfect films. But if you asked me which one I wanted to watch at a random moment of time, I'd probably say Halloween over The Thing. Number 8, Star Wars. Just the first one gotta have some representation of that in there. And I think it's the one that I would watch the most. Number 7.
At least you have that representation.
Yep. Number 7, I have a Western representation. I have The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Love me some Clint, at least his Westerns, not so much his old man politics, but, separate the art from the artist. At least he's not Mel Gibson, I guess. Number 6, I have The Shining, another horror movie. Had to have some representation of horror. So Shining, arguably my favorite horror movie of all time, although that is debatable based on this list. Number 5, Die Hard. Got to have me some Die Hard. Another movie that I could watch just about any time. That's to sit your ass on the couch and watch it at any point. Number 4, movie I probably in college would have said was my favorite movie of all time, but as I've gotten further away from college, it's dropped to more realistic films that I would probably watch over it. Pulp Fiction, probably my easily my favorite Tarantino movie, is arguably my favorite director. Number 3, which is actually the highest ranking horror movie on this list. Dan already mentioned it, Jaws. But I feel like I don't really consider Jaws a horror movie when we talk about favorite horror movies of all time. But it is 100% a horror movie. Just gets that pass because it's a 4th of July movie.
Yeah.
Number 2, Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was a huge influence on my life between action figures, cartoons, and these 2 movies, which I had in rotation for most of my childhood. And number 1, the movie I recently have decided is probably my favorite movie of all time, after kind of hanging out in the 2s to the 4s, is Back to the Future. I think it's a perfect film. It encapsulates all the fun that is going to the movies and all the fun that movies can be. And it's perfect. Perfect movie. Another honorable mention that probably could have cracked my top 10 would have been Jurassic Park. But, you have Jaws and Jurassic Park in there. They're very similar. But, yeah, that's my top 10.
It's another solid top 10. There was the overlap. That just very minor changes, right? You had Jaws at 4.
Yep.
Yeah. And Ghostbusters, we both had Ghostbusters at 2. So, yeah, that was, you hit upon the toy aspect. Oh, man. My house was filled with Ghostbusters toys. It was such it was lightning in a bottle, something they haven't been able to recapture since.
Yep. Time and place.
Exactly. No matter how hard they try, it's just you'll never recreate the magic that was that first movie. It's on our lists, and it's the only movie where we can say that, I think, because I like Back to the Future too. It's obviously not as good as Back to the Future, but it's a worthy successor.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters 2, not so much.
Yeah. All right, Mark.
Yeah.
Long-awaited one. I am interested to hear this one.
So, you guys might be shocked to hear this, but you don't know how hard it was to not have the bid just be the 10 Fast and Furious movies.
That's what I was going to say.
I was thinking about that bit, but I want to be honest because I don't think I've ever told even you guys maybe what is truly my top 10. But even though I just mentioned it, number 10 is Fast 5. I make this semi-joke that it's one of the greatest action movies of the last 20 years, and it is definitely the one I've watched the most out of all of them. Number 9 is going back to my childhood. It's a VHS that I watched a whole lot, is Varsity Blues. I still from time to time just quote certain lines in that movie in my head for no reason, just to myself at times. Number 8 is maybe a little bit of a shock, and or maybe not. I don't know if I ever mentioned it. But number 8 is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Okay.
Yeah, I got 3 movies on here that I would like to thank my grandmother for making me watch Turner Classic Movies when I was growing up. And Liberty Valance is the first one. The famous quote, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend, is something that has stuck with me and made it into just sometimes joking about things that happen. Number 7. Sorry. Number 7 is... Wait, I put these a little bit out of order. Number 7 is Love Actually. It's a Christmas movie I watch every Christmas. It's my traditional one. I make sure I watch it at least once. Got a little bit extra meaning now since the summer. Since I can, point out some places and actually visited some of the locations shot there. Number 6 is the one of the second of 3 older movies. It is Arsenic and Old Lace. I still crack up every time watching that when the grandfather believes that he is Teddy Roosevelt, and all the people in the house, for the most part, just play along with it. And I just think it's a really good bit. He's not doing a bit in the movie, but it from a guy that loves just sticking with an idea and just going with it. That plan for a character really gets me every time. Number 5 is Perks of Being a Wallflower. One of the few movies that I watched and read the book. So a little multimedia there for me. I saw it twice in theaters, have the Blu-ray at home. So definitely enjoyed that. Number 4 is, I do have a sequel in here. It is The Godfather 2. Definitely, as much as I love the final scene of The Godfather, the second one is a better movie, in my opinion. Overall, they sort of kind of got the idea of what the series was about and sort of hit their stride with it. It definitely a rewatch whenever I used to have cable and it would pop on at TV there. Number 3 here. I remember which one I haven't said. Number 3 is Ghostbusters. That, as you guys have said multiple times, it's a movie that we all got into as children. I came in the back route in that I saw the cartoon before the actual movie, so I was more confused seeing the real live action Ghostbusters not be the same as the cartoon ones that I grew up with and all the action figures. Number 2 for me, as Ant said most of what I was going to say about it, but number 2 is Back to the Future. Another movie I've seen probably dozen times or more at this point. I actually went and saw the play when I was in London, which was pretty interesting. But there's not many movies that I would have seen the movie and also went and seen the play. But Back to the Future, definitely one of them. As Ant said, perfect movie. It's definitely one of a kind. It's one of those movies that's still referenced today, even though kids watching newer stuff might, in some cases, have no idea what the movie is. And then number 1, probably a shock, but it's a movie I've watched more times than I can count, and mostly just on cable television, not so much DVD or anything, because it was one of my grandmother's favorite movies. I really adore Some Like It Hot. I think it's one of the best comedies of that era, for sure. One of the best final lines in movies. Some parts don't age well, obviously, but it does more care with the subject of cross-dressing men without making it seem too offensive towards any group of people, which is very shocking for a movie of that era. But it still makes me laugh to this day, and then brings back memories of being like a early teen and all, just chilling on the couch with my grandmom at night. So, yep, Some Like It Hot, number 1.
Okay, interesting. No Rocky on there.
No, Rock. I'll say the 2 that are off my list are Rocky and T2.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought I was going to lean more sports heavy as well.
No,
but that's a great list.
Yeah, I'm very Rocky was the hard one to keep off, essentially. But yeah, and plus I would have probably taken the route of Dan and done a group of them together.
Sure.
There, if I did it. But yeah, these are those 10 movies are movies that I will watch. Whenever they're on television. And for some reason Rocky feels like 11th to me, but yeah.
So just outside of
just outside.
Okay, that's fair. Ghostbusters getting love. I like
Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, 3 for 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well earned.
Yeah, the Back to the Future was I've mentioned it multiple times on this podcast, was part of the like 6 or 7 VHSs that me and my sister owned together as kids growing up. And yeah, so got a lot of play in the house. The other tough one cuts from that list was I couldn't find a John Hughes movie to make it into my top 10, even though I've seen all of them multiple times. And also trying to find a place for 2 Nick Cage movies in Face Off and The Rock.
I was disappointed you left out Triple X.
No, that's just a really funny movie to say I like. But yeah, that movie is just ridiculous. But
Sure.
But yeah, it doesn't if I'm going to put a Vin Diesel movie on there, I think Fast Five is hands down the best movie that he's been in physically that I've seen. But yeah, I knew my list would be a little eclectic because I do as you saw, as people might not know, I do have a couple golden era Hollywood movies in there that I do enjoy that you might not think about when I'm here praising Justin Lin and his Fast and Furious movies.
Well, I was shocked because I thought to myself, I'm definitely going to be the only one who has a movie before the 60s. And yeah, I was a little surprised to hear, Some Like It Hot is on there.
Yeah.
So now I don't feel as special.
There's a funny story with our friend Brandon and we took a movie class together. It was Com 150. If Ann ever went through that class, where you watched movies and then sort of broke it down and like stuff and had to take tests on it. And I never went to the classes in terms of when we watched the movies part of it back then. But the one that I made sure I saw was they opened with Some Like It Hot, and that one was always a joke within like the classes where we just sit and watch a movie, decide not to be there. I'm like, well, I'll just look up the synopsis online for whatever they're asking me. But yeah,
well, that was fun, and I hope everyone kind of understands where we're coming from now. 260 plus episodes in, those are our favorite movies of all time. I don't know. Tell us who won. This was not a point of whose list is better, but why not?
Sure.
Pit them against each other.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's pit each other, pit our stuff against each other so we can just like end our friendship.
Yeah. Tell everyone
my
that
John Carpenter movie is better than Anthony's.
But that's our episode for this week for Shadow of the Dragon and our top 10 movies of all time. So check us out on all our socials, TikTam Pod on X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, and Threads where they call this a movie on TikTok, and we are at Gmail, tictampod@gmail.com. Hit us up there and send us an email. Tell us what your top 10 is, and tell us some movies you want us to watch. That's always a good idea. And those are the ways you can get a hold of us. If you have 5 seconds of your busy schedule, go on to your podcatcher choice, give us a 5-star review. It helps out a great deal. And that's our show this week. The director of Shadow of the Dragon is Jimmy Williams. So for Dan Aquino and Mark Myers, this is Anthony Davecchio telling Jimmy Williams, well, you certainly made a movie, didn't you? Thanks for listening to They Called Us a Movie. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at TicTamPod. That's TCTAM Pod. You can also check us out on TikTok at They Called Us a Movie.